All right, I am here at the National Conference for Media Reform with the one, the only Kevin Gosztola. He is, of course, a writer for FireDogLake, FireDogLake.com. You can also find him on Twitter. It's K Gosztola, right?
Yep.
I remember that. Very good. So, Kevin, thanks for sitting down with me, man.
Thank you.
All right, so Kevin, you're one of the journalists who I can't think of another journalist who's been covering the Bradley Manning case more. It's something you really devoted so much time and energy to covering this story that, you know, that when we talked about before how much the traditional media just entirely ignored it or just was a stenographer to the U.S. government's case against it. Listeners may remember the last time we talked about it, we played some of the audio, the leaked audio from the Bradley Manning trial. The trial is still going on. It's still happening in a somewhat secret way where it's sort of a really messed up scenario when we don't even know when the trial is actually going to take place. But he has pled guilty on the actual getting into the classified information. Let's talk about what he's pled guilty to and the case that the government is still pursuing on him, which they probably do not have to. So let's talk a bit about that.
All right. On February 28th, when he read that statement that people heard in the leaked audio, he was pleading guilty to possessing the classified information improperly, to willfully communicating that information to WikiLeaks, and then to engaging in acts that were service discrediting to the military. And all of these are under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. So they're violations that, for the most part, only a soldier could be found guilty of making. And then there are the federal charges, which he did not plead guilty and was careful to make sure that he was leaving some doubt. If you listen to his statement, you can read into it and see where he's trying to put forward some facts that would make it difficult for the government to prove its case. But the federal charges are the Espionage Act charge that he faces, and of course, Obama has prosecuted a record number of alleged leakers or whistleblowers under his administration. And then there's the severe charge of aiding the enemy, which is it amounts to basically calling him a traitor, making sure that they can prove that and put him in prison under that. And he faces the potential of life in prison if convicted of that charge. And then there is, they say that he stole the files, so he faces a violation of a federal larceny statute. And they think that he converted or purloined those files from his computer. And these charges are all from the original 22 that he faced, and the government has this choice to go forward and keep prosecuting him and put him on trial on June 3rd when the full court-martial begins. And they could actually go ahead and just accept the plea. And the plea right now, everyone should understand, has a maximum of 20 years sentence. And the thing about his plea is the judge can, under no scenario, find him not guilty. So Bradley Manning is going to be found guilty and will likely do jail time.
Right. And it looks like it could be probably 20 years. Maybe it could be less, perhaps, but it's most likely, at the bare minimum, even if he's found not guilty of all these other charges, he's going to jail up to a max of 20 years.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. So, and this is where it gets the extra insidiousness of this whole thing gets in there, of just the whole idea of aiding the enemy. And if anyone listens, we played some of the audio of his statement. The whole idea of aiding the enemy is really sick and disgusting. Clearly, he is someone who saw massive wrongdoing, massive war crimes, and felt rightly that this is something that the country and the world needed to know. And just the whole idea of aiding the enemy, he's essentially saying that the American people are the enemy. That's who he's actually aiding, because he's not leaking to Al Qaeda. He's not leaking this to terrorists. Well, again, what would they do with this stuff anyway? It clearly, by saying he's aiding the enemy, the Obama administration and the government are saying that the American people actually are the enemy in this scenario.
Well, what's funny is when I look at what the United States government is trying to bring forward through these military prosecutors, I sort of think, generally we agree that it's not good to shout fire in a crowded theater if there isn't one happening. I think, it'd be good if prosecutors didn't shout terrorist in a courtroom when there isn't any actual proof of terrorism. And essentially that is what they're trying to put on Bradley Manning and say that your act has been directly contributed to somehow making it possible for a group to cause injury to the United States or advantage a foreign nation. And when you really break it down, I would just say that generally what they are wanting to do in court is bring this digital media that they claim to have obtained in the raid on Osama bin Laden's compound in Abbottabad, Pakistan, and they claim to have a defense operator who they're going to put on the stand. However, we don't get to know his identity. They want to do it in a closed session. They don't want to give the defense access to him before the cross-examination so they can prepare to cross him. And by that, the big deal about that would be that you wouldn't be able to prepare to try to impeach him as a witness, like say, that's not credible, he's lying, or look at his history. And essentially, the government wants to do all of this and not be questioned about it. And there's really no evidence at all. I mean, so they say Osama bin Laden, this media has State Department cables, it has war logs on it. But you still have to demonstrate that, like, what was he doing with this material?
Right.
And also, terrorists read people's political writing. They do. They have been known to talk about Bob Woodward's book before. They've been known to read Noam Chomsky.
Right. So officially, Woodward is aiding the enemy. Which we could all argue that too.
The point should be made, if this is going to be a standard, that if a terrorist invokes some writer or journalist's work and uses it as part of a call to action, like in a fatwa or something, I think the U.S. government would have a pretty long list of people that they would have to go through and start to target.
Yeah. Before I let you go, let's just talk a little about the just kind of horrific act. You mentioned it about the unprecedented war on whistleblowers, which is it really is something that one of the more disappointing. I mean, there's lots of disappointments from the Obama administration, but it's certainly one of the ones where, from what he said when he was running, it's the exact opposite of what it actually is. So just talk a little bit before we go about the unprecedented prosecution of those who are actually trying to do their jobs and be patriotic and actually expose crimes and wrongdoings and how the administration treats them.
Well, what is remarkable is they did pass a Whistleblower Protection Enhancement Act, but it does not afford protections to intelligence agency whistleblowers or anybody in a national security agency. And recently there was Sunshine Week, and a big headline was that more information than ever, they're invoking a national security exemption so they don't release the material. So with Barack Obama, it appears that he is for whistleblowing and he's for transparency, except if it has to do with national security policies. And what that suggests is that he himself is in favor of or has become captive to the national security state, in the sense that he will do what they tell him to do, and he has learned that in order to prosecute special forces operations, in order to engage in drone strikes and to do all these overseas actions in the wars and diplomacy, that it is best to have secrecy be the standard for everything and to fight it, to have Justice Department lawyers in court arguing the most absurd legal arguments so that they can keep this all from us. And I just think people should understand that this is something that Barack Obama is doing himself, that he has a incredible distaste for leaks. And you can read about it if you are to look at it. I know that Jonathan Alter's book, The Promise, has incredible quotes from Obama about despising leaks. And it's just, people need to understand that Washington, like, leaks are currency. Everything, just people trade it for information and everything. And the fact that whistleblowers are getting a short shrift in this because Barack Obama doesn't want to govern with an open national security policy is just unfortunate.
Kevin Gosztola from FireDogLake, FireDogLake.com. Again, we'll once June comes around, we'll be covering this again. So thanks for what you're doing, man. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you.